for the YouTubes.
Hello.
I love how this is one of your first vlogs, right? Or
Yeah, I've done
video podcast. What do they call that? A VOD?
We don't have a microphone for you, Liz. Unfortunately,
You're going to sound like way echoed in
Are
the
we
chamber.
recording?
we are.
Oh.
Yeah, we're live.
I'm gonna
the
do my
soft
best to
banter
get
cold
words in
open
between
is
these two.
amazing.
Yeah, you're looking here, Andrew. You're looking there when you're making your point.
Do I have to look
you
at the camera? Can I
I mean,
look
you
at
can
you?
focus however you want.
Depends
It's
how
up to you.
serious you
I
want to
can't
be
look
with
at
your
the camera.
delivery.
It does. Yeah. Do you want to put a period at the end? Make everybody uncomfortable.
Point the hand. Yes.
That's our thing in our group chat. If you want to let somebody know you're pissed off, you just put a period at the end of whatever you say.
Oh, yeah. The period is serious.
That's where we're going to start. That sentence, we're going to
The
cut off the
period
pre
is
before.
serious.
All right, guys. We are here today. We are going to be talking about Ozempic and GLP-1s and prescriptions as it pertains to the medical community and kind of how we think about these things from a friendship perspective and from, trying to adopt a healthy lifestyle. So I'm going to kick it over to Andrew first, if we can, to just tell us a little bit about give us like a 30-second or a 1-minute overshot of what a GLP-1 is and kind of how it interacts with the body.
Okay. A GLP-1 actually stands for a glucagon-like peptide. And what that is essentially a hormone that our body releases naturally. And what we're seeing now in this medication space is a man-made version of this to help suppress appetite and slow digestion. So our body produces it naturally. We're starting to use that in different arenas. Typically, it has just previously been used in diabetics for blood sugar control. But now we're starting to see the secondary benefit for some weight loss.
And so when we kind of think about that use from a weight loss perspective, one of the big things that I always try to think about is updating my system to kind of have those little spidey senses when I hear something like, oh, we can take a medication and, get weight loss. So if we kind of think about what's like the underlying mechanism that helps it be a weight loss drug.
It essentially is going to produce a hormone that controls our appetite.
Okay.
So when we're eating normally and we're exercising normally, these hormones should work normally. And what its main purpose was intended for was to help individuals that are diabetics that have blood sugar control issues, essentially secondary to eating too much food or eating too much carbohydrate, to control that. And there's no real magic going on inside of our body to be this silver bullet. It is essentially just producing that same hormone we would produce naturally if all of our lifestyle systems are intact, and essentially preventing us from wanting to consume more food, and then in turn, helping us eat less and lose weight.
Yeah. All right, Shelby, we're kicking over to you. So Shelby's both our token female for today. Yeah. Do you like being you enjoy being the token female perspective, but also a nutrition expert in her own domain. And, one of the big things that you've really focused on specifically is, I think, body positivity and trying to help meet women, specifically women for you, where they are with their nutritional planning and those things. Yeah. So I'm interested in just kind of like your take generally in terms of how you would view this in your repertoire. Like if you were to have a nutrition client who said, hey, I'm interested. I have some friends who have been doing this and have seen some success. What do you think?
Well, I have been approached by not only clients, but like just people in my life, family members, aunts, whatever, about it. And they asked my opinion. And I lean a little bit, I kind of sway a little bit on both ends of the spectrum in terms of like, is it healthy for you? Is it, because we don't know a lot about it still. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like I've read a ton of research about it recently, and I just don't feel like I can provide like a super solid answer. I can provide my opinion, and which is, if you're leaning towards like, let's say you're an obese person, mm-hmm. and you've been diagnosed with obesity because when people are obese, I feel like, since obesity is a huge indicator for then being diagnosed with cancer, I feel like that is one way to kind of approach this drug, the GLP-1 drug, doing that for, basically to not, I'm sorry, I'm like getting tripped up over my words, but basically not being obese anymore, being
General
able
health
to, like,
purposes,
general
yeah.
health purposes, going that route. If this is more for like an aesthetic purpose, I can also understand that. Having worked with many clients, my mother, my aunts, and we've all struggled with being overweight and things like that. I feel like I can see why people would lean more towards like this quote unquote magic pill, right? So I feel like what's most important is like you just being honest with yourself as to why you're taking it and like understanding the true why as to why you would want to take it, or maybe realize that, hey, like if I don't take it, am I okay with the risks of being obese or putting in the work towards not being obese, right? So there's like different avenues. And I think having the conversation and just being honest and open about it, I feel like a lot of times Ozempic and the word Ozempic or what are the other terms of it? Like Wegovy, right?
Yeah, Wegovy,
Wegovy,
one of the brand names.
yeah, are like, it's all like taboo. Like people whisper about it. And I don't think that necessarily needs to become a thing. I think it's okay to talk about. I think it's important to talk about because of what we don't know about it. So coming from like a female perspective, there's like different ways to approach it, I guess. I don't know if that answers any of your questions, but
I think it's also interesting that from a female perspective, from what I gather in working with female clients, that there's this heightened sense of pressure to look better.
right.
Versus like men who maybe can more just take on this, if you can use the word dad bod, or just be a little bit more focused on strength and muscle building. So there's some very interesting cultural implications with that, and kind of where that's going to fall over time will be very, very interesting to track and just support people through.
Well, I feel like as of late, it's becoming more and more like household name, like Botox, like forever ago. Botox used to be like taboo, like don't talk about it, plastic surgery, yada, yada. But now it's like, oh, this person's on it, or this person, I heard this person's taking it. And then I literally this morning, I was like, I'm going to see what it takes just to like order it, if I were to order it. And it was literally just like on demand. Like I can order it. I mean, it's $2,000 a month, but like.
I see.
Yeah, and that's, I think, something that has one of the crazier parts for me on it is I think that nurse practitioners can actually implement the drug without an actual prescription from a general care practitioner. And so I think that then is pretty much, that's going to be universally true with any drug that's going to thrust it a little bit more into the mainstream more quickly, because you do take away a little bit of that maybe healthy conscious voice, that barrier from the GP saying like, why don't we maybe try this before? And people can maybe rush into things. And that's kind of a little bit why we wanted to have this conversation, and how I kind of want to break things up a little bit is like, what are we thinking about before? What are we thinking about maybe during? And then how do we think about the life after, right? And I think that that's a really good frame of mind if we do think about it, because you can then kind of put yourself into these phases. It's a very similar phase of how I also have a conversation with men specifically about taking testosterone or supplementary testosterone or TRT is, let's think about the before. Let's think about maybe why, during, like what would be the catalyst that we would want to start taking it. And then, what does life look like after we take it? Although for testosterone supplementation, there really isn't a lot of life after, unfortunately. So, so kind of thinking about those phases, the before phase would be the kind of what we're talking about. Hey, I've heard this thing. I have some friends. They're interested. I'm curious about, if this might be right for me. I feel like I've struggled with nutrition for a while. I'm still not very happy with my body image, and I've got some of these health implications, and we're kind of going in this boat. So I'll tell you kind of a little bit about how I kind of think about the before phase, and then you guys kind of tell me if you want to add anything to it. So, before we would think about starting it, I think to Shelby's perspective is we obviously want to make sure that we think about how this fits into our bigger health picture, right? I always think about things first from the frame of reference of I want to be a healthy person, and a healthy person really isn't beholden to a doctor, right? We don't have to go in and get a lot of shots. We don't have to think about going in and getting a lot of medical interventions. We're generally just kind of a healthy person on our own. And so if we do go in and seek medical intervention, it should be like something that we really, really, really need. And that's kind of, for me, the marker of a really healthy person. And so if that's kind of our striving goal, then we want to think about what's going to kind of get us there. So if we are in this boat of we're looking at it before, we want to make sure that we have exhausted the resources of trying things naturally with nutrition, trying to think about building a consistent exercise routine. We're sleeping, we're stress managing, we're doing some of these things. And then I think in this way, if we add this in on top of those already good things, that's, I think, then when you're really going to see this be very successful with people is like, hey, I already started working a little bit on, my protein, and I'm doing pretty good there. And I've started sleeping better. I'm sleeping 8 hours a night, and I'm working out 3 days a week. And like, I'm doing pretty good, right? But I still have a long way to go, right? I'm still, maybe I'm in the mid 300s and I want to get down to the 250. That's a long way to go, right? And I think that this might help me because the biggest thing I'm failing with, even though I'm nailing my protein goals and even though I'm sleeping and even though I'm exercising a little bit, is I still have this tendency to want to snack and to want to overeat just a little bit. And I know that specifically that's what this helps with, is it helps suppress that appetite a little bit. So then I think in that way, if you're looking at it through that lens, then it can be something from a before perspective that's good. And I think that's kind of what you were getting to from a health perspective.
Yeah, like I think that's all really important, and just I think over consideration is important, and like taking like into account literally every aspect of lifestyle in like the before stage.
Yeah. And let's not forget that what a big part of this weight loss is, and what research is pointing to, is the muscle mass that's coming with that. So when we're considering implications in the before stage, we have to really talk about, who is this individual? Is this going to directly impact them in a harmful way for that reason? And then to add to your before point, working with a nutrition coach so that you can get a better handle on how you're eating and what you're doing. Because 9 times out of 10, if you're talking to someone about balancing their diet appropriately and eating the right amounts of foods and getting those macronutrients better distributed throughout the day, a lot of that snacking, a lot of those appetite, hunger, cravings go away.
Yeah,
and that's kind of my go-to strategy at this point, where if someone comes to me and they're telling me they're snacking or they're having late night cravings or they're hungry later in the evening, I always say, let's look up the waterfall. It's likely because we're not eating enough during the day, definitely not eating enough protein. And if that's going to be your biggest issue to start a medication like this, then that's something that we can easily target beforehand and working with the coach.
Yeah, just getting to the root cause, because even if they are, let's say they are eating everything that you tell them to eat and they're hitting their macros, but they're still like craving something, it's maybe because of stress, right? Cortisol is like, I'm a big stress eater. So like, I totally get it in that respect too. It's like, let's get to the root cause of why are we stressed? Like, instead of going down the rabbit hole of medication.
Yeah, and I was going to touch a lot on, the muscle mass thing. One of the big things I would recommend before is obviously we want to make sure we get a full blood panel. We want to make sure we have some of those things. We also want to get, something like a bod pod, an in-body scan, a DEXA scan, something to track the actual muscle mass that we carry on our frame and look at our overall, fat mass as well. And we want to be doing those. I think the biggest thing coming out now about the drug is the attack on the muscle mass. So we want to know going into it, hey, I've got 98 pounds of skeletal muscle mass, and then do that consistently every 4 to 6 weeks to make sure that, hey, we're not dumping muscle mass, right? Because when you think about it from a health perspective, it's extremely important as we go through weight loss journeys to try to maintain as much muscle mass as physically possible, because muscle mass, number one, is really hard to put on, right? It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of work, right? It's not like just going to be given to you, right? And so that's kind of the main thing, is once you lose it, it's 10 times harder to put back on. But number two is it's going to be one of those things that's going to play into a lot of our metabolism, our metabolic rate, and our general ability when we do go to use our body and start exercising. So we see when people go through major weight loss journeys, and let's say you lose 30 pounds, but it's 15 pounds of muscle and 15 pounds of fat, that then has
so much muscle.
Yeah, that's a significant chunk of the actual muscle mass that you put on your body. And that's going to drop your metabolic rate quite a bit. That's going to hurt your energy overall and your overall performance when it comes to things like in the gym. And generally, I feel like it's also going to take an extremely long period of time to like put back on. And so, so that's probably that's my biggest concern when I look at people who are thinking about potentially starting this, is they're not looking at that whole picture from the like long-term health and longevity. When we think about when you're 65 or you're 70 or you're 75, the most important thing is your muscle mass, right? And if we're like chipping away at that in our prime muscle building years, so if you're 25 to 40 or 45, you are in your prime muscle building years, we don't want to start chipping away at that at all. We should always be in a growth mindset from a muscle mass perspective. So that's one of my big befores, is like getting a before tracker on your muscle mass and making sure that we have some steps in place to continue to track that as we progress potentially into the drug. So,
Don't you think that would affect like bone density too? Like as you age,
Yeah.
like losing muscle like that?
and so, these are always the things with appetite suppressants. So it's going to fit in, it's very similar with like, bariatric surgery where we're putting some steps in place to limit the total volume of things we're eating. The most important thing is like we want to be in a mindset, and this is just sort of like the friendship ethos, and I think we all agree with this, where we're fueling our body, right? We're fueling our body to grow muscle and to be able to come in and do performance and work out and lift our kids up and have fun throughout the day and play sports and do whatever the things that we want to be doing with our bodies, and that's what we're fueling it for. And if we have that mindset, then that's going to carry us well into our later age. And so when we start thinking about it as now we put this appetite suppressant in, well, you're just giving yourself a smaller fuel tank, right? It makes it a little bit harder to fuel yourself fully for the things that you really want to be able to do. So, that's just only something, again, it's not like saying that these things cannot be productive, because they certainly can be, and we'll shift this into the during phase. What I think about during then is while we are taking it, the two most important things that I can say that matter the most is still hitting your protein goals and lifting weights.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it could be a big challenge for people. I think the evidence is showing that some of these satiety cues and responses that we're feeling can linger well past the time of initial injection. So I think a lot of people might be listening to this, not really knowing how the drug may work. And it's not necessarily like you take it for a meal or even that day. We're finding that some evidence is supporting multiple days of reduced appetite. So when you're in this during phase, and let's say you are a healthy individual that's, here at Friendship or wherever you are, so many things can play a factor in that. I mean, just think about everything that requires energy in your day.
Right.
Your work life, your commute, being present for your kids, your exercise, all those can be impacted by reduced intake and reduced hydration. Like all these cues are subdued. So these are huge considerations that we want to be thinking about and really just weighing that cost when we're thinking about moving forward with a drug like this.
I also think like when I'm full, or like let's say I'm hungover or something, like or sick.
Shelby.
I know. No, I'm never hungover really. But when I am, I'm picturing me back in college. Like when I was hungover.
Oh, I used to eat so bad the next day.
Well, sure, but like now, 33, okay, let's erase hangover. I'm sick now. Okay, I'm
Okay,
ill.
all right.
I wake up.
Cut that.
And you just like don't want to eat, right? Like the last thing I want to do, even though in my brain I know I need protein, if that's my goal, like continue being fit or whatever, and I'm taking this medication, like the last thing I want to eat is protein because of how filling it is.
Nice piece of baked fish.
Like I will, or like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I'd rather reach for a drink.
Dots,
or like
pretzels.
something easily digestible, sugar, like cookies or whatever, like something easy that's like gonna really taste good or whatever. And the last thing I'm thinking of is like steak or chicken or, you know what I mean? So then it's like out the window.
Well, I wonder if you'd even be pointed in that direction because as I was kind of prepping for this conversation and we shared that podcast that we were listening about, it was very interesting to hear about some users having some of those pleasure centers in their brain be impacted by this because of how that's so uniquely tied to food consumption. So then it's almost like, are you even going to want to have some pretzels or cookies and all of that? Yeah. And that doesn't just stop at food. It bleeds into other areas of your life as well. We're talking libido, things that are light you up outside of your home, like hiking and different things that bring you joy. So, even when you start branching into the non-medical side of things and looking at it from just like a pure enjoyment of life, as a foodie and someone who loves to eat, like I can never imagine that. But if you were to lose that, I always think like I never lost taste or smell if I ever caught COVID. And I tell Melissa all the time, if that were to happen to me, I'm like, just end it.
Bad.
I remember.
Mine was real bad. Yeah, I lost complete the taste sensation. I lost smell for like 6 months, but the taste sensation was super weird. I only lost that for maybe like 2
salads
weeks
during that time.
Dude,
just
I
hammering
he
salads.
ate vegetables.
I ate flawless. Yeah, I was like, I might as well. This is
can't
never going to
taste
happen
them.
again in my life. I was like, I'm just going to
I
eat
was
nothing
so
but
impressed.
flawless. Yeah, it was the weirdest thing in the world. Like
Subjectively, did you feel any change? Like, were you like, I'm so lean or my
No.
workouts feel so good?
No. And at that time too, that was like in the height of, I feel like lockdown-ish time, maybe. I can't quite remember. It was like maybe that fall.
The
or
dark
I
whatever.
remember you
times.
complaining about it.
The
for
dark
quite a while.
times.
It just got weird. And I remember trying so hard, like every day I'd do a mixture. I'd do like Brussels sprouts or peppers and then like Oreos. And it's just like still
tastes the
nothing,
same.
still nothing.
All in a burrito.
Yeah. So really, really weird. Well, yeah, I mean, I think to your point, this is why I think really being careful with taking on medical intervention for things that seem on the surface, right? They seem like, oh yeah, like I want that, right? Like, and you maybe turn that logical part of your brain off and you let the emotional side ride a little bit too hard because you're not actually thinking about maybe some of those underlying causes of like, okay, we are turning off centers in our brain. We're actually playing with the chemical composition of our body to turn on and off things in our brain. Like that automatically should always just draw a little bit of red flags in your just thinking in your logical brain when you start thinking about being a healthy person. And we really want to have that lens firmly over top of any health decisions we make. And, that's, my big concern from like a society perspective is that we're sort of letting that short-term thought, emotional brain come in and maybe override. And, a lot of the history with some of these prescription style drugs that get out into the mainstream and get into use like this one is, some time goes by and then, oh yeah, there's actually this side effect and this side effect and this side effect. And then the people who took it, have it's the biggest loser fallacy. It's like the biggest loser, basically you'd get these people who'd come on, they'd lose 140 pounds in, a couple months and they would crash their metabolism. They would lose all of their muscle mass. And then almost universally, if you looked at those people a year after the show was over, they were all significantly worse off, both from a health perspective and from a weight perspective. Very, very few people were able to actually turn it around into just a long-term healthy lifestyle. And so we have to be aware of that. And that kind of shifts us into a little bit of this kind of after phase, which is like, let's say we took it, let's say we were successful, right? And I already know there are a couple of people who have taken it and have been super successful. I've lost some weight, right? I feel great. It's making my workouts feel better. It's easier on my knees. Like the number one thing to help fix bad knees is losing weight, right?
I heard that. Sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
I heard that like the knee prosthetic, hip prosthetic, industry is like tanking.
Yeah, and
heard
I don't know.
about that.
I was gonna say I don't know if it'll
there's a
happen
lot of
that
it.
fast, but if there's a weight loss, like what would be the opposite of a panda, like a weight loss, wave, right? That just happens. There's entire industries
like-
that are reliant upon that to exist, right? That
Right.
and it's not even necessarily preying on. Some of them are just surgeries, right? For knees and backs and things like COPD, things that are very attached to directly
Sleep
to
apnea,
obesity.
CPAP devices.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think sitting in the seat, you say that, and you're like, oh, these industries are going to be affected, but like, is it a bad thing?
No,
right?
no.
It's really cool to think about what sort of benefits this sort of drug can have, and how we can really start to eventually put it into a very positive light. But it is extremely woven into the fabric of our culture that, like, to speak to what Shelby said earlier, it's like taboo to even talk about this right now. It's like, why?
Right.
This should be a conversation. It's just a shame that there's not more patient-centered models where they have professionals like this to walk them through this
Yeah.
decision-making process, versus how, like you said, you can go online and if you have the money, you can get it on demand. I'm not sure. Are there still issues with shortages on
It
some
did
of that
say
stuff?
low quantity.
Yeah, low quantity.
Well, and if it's 2,000 now, that's
Well,
up because
and
it
that
was
the brand.
750 and
That
then it
was
was
the brand.
1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
So-
it was Ozempic specifically, and then the
Well, and I know that's been one of your concerns is that they are potentially making this drug harder to get for diabetics who actually might really need it.
Right. And that's where, that becomes an ethical thing. That's like a you and your decision. But I think it'll be very, very interesting to track how this does become more mainstream, how this does become a little bit more spoken about when it comes to affecting industry and how that'll affect our economy long term. But for so long, I mean, we've been trending in the wrong direction despite being the most medically advanced society in the world. And a lot of this is linked to obesity in our nutrition and our lifestyle habits. So I'm excited to see how that goes, but it doesn't change the fact that the after part of it doesn't change much from the beginning part of it, where you're just putting a Band-Aid over essentially a very, very large issue.
Yeah, I mean, so when you said that, it's not bad. So there's a really interesting article I read one time talking about the knock-on effects from like artificial intelligence driving. So basically like robotic drivers, so robotic Ubers, and our cars all drive us places. And so one of the most interesting thing they were talking about is how organ donation would effectively go away. So we'd have to like learn how to 3D print organs because like I think it's something like 60 or 70% of car accidents are the organ donations. And how many more people could potentially die as a result of these cars basically stopping getting in car wrecks. And like, it was wild, man. They were talking about all this other stuff too, like garages will go away. So like everybody's got like 1,000 square feet in their homes that they're gonna have to like figure out what to do. So there'll be a whole new business that comes up around like garage remodels and how to like repurpose these rooms. So like this guy basically tried to think of like 6 and 7 and 8 order effects down the line of what would happen just from AI coming over and taking on driving. So I think it's the same thing that we're talking about with like obesity. It's like, you know, if this were to be a problem solver in some capacity, right? I think it'll be interesting to think about reframing a little bit of, you know, how we maybe think about this. And this is stuff I know we're all thinking about as, you know, is this a tool in our toolkit? You know, is this something that we do need to maybe have conversations with people about who, you know, maybe we're doing some of the right things from a nutrition perspective, but we're still struggling a little bit. Workouts are super challenging on our knees, on our back. We can't move very well because we are carrying too much extra weight. And if we were just to lose 50 or 60 pounds, we were to have some success then we maybe could come in, we could work out with a little more intensity, we could move a little bit better, maybe we could get into some squats and do some bodyweight lunges, and now we're doing better, you know, within our exercise. And so that's, you know, something that I think we're all maybe battling or thinking about a little bit. But I think that that's how we have to think about it, is like, what are the knock-on effects, right? Like what, you know, how are we counseling people through this? This is what I think a lot about as a coach is, number one, hopefully that us having this conversation can have people come to us as coaches so that we can have conversations. Maybe even help us, just tell us like if you're honest, so that we can help counsel you through that. Like we were talking about, not letting it be unspoken and not talked about.
Well, because too, I know one of the side effects is like depression and like, you know, being sad, and also like a loss of ambition. So like start taking it, and are you going to feel motivated coming to the gym? So like you might need a little extra, you know, pull or push or whatever. So it's just like this ripple effect of like extra help, I feel like. So going at it alone may not be the right way.
Yeah. I mean, I always think of trying to think about things as a team, right? And, you know, my big thing, and I think sometimes people think automatically, and I'm going to point more to Andy here than anybody, but I think sometimes people think that like we like judge them or have a judgment towards them. They like put these preconceived notions on us, right? And
my heart's open to everyone. I judge no one.
I just want everyone to know you did not point to me.
But I think that's one of those things where I always try to just look at like, you know, you say something's going on, you've got something happening, and you tell me, right? First of all, I appreciate you trusting and confiding in me to tell me. And second of all, like there's zero judgment. It's just going to be, if you're asking for help from me, I'm going to try to just take it and give you honest feedback. So if you were to come in and be like, you know, hey Jeff, just like a heads up, like I did start taking Ozempic, you know, I'm on week 4, I'm doing it because X and Y and Z. I just want to let you know. And I can say, okay, great. Like, I hope we're super successful with it. You know, here are my follow-up questions, or here are things, you know, from a counseling perspective that I'd like to talk about, or just kind of keep in the front of your mind. But I think it's interesting how much people put like their own preconceived, what they think the gossip is about them doing it, they put on to other people before actually going and having conversations.
Sure.
with them.
What do they, let's just face it, people will inherently view that as a shortcut, right? So I think coming at it, seeking to understand, and that's really how we should go into any situation, is really the lens you have to view it through. But, you know, to be honest, like we are preachers of health and wellness and longevity. And, you know, despite being, you can be any size and you can have no medical conditions, as Shelby said, you know, the risks are there for obesity and waist circumference. So when we're talking about healthy and getting to that end goal, I view this much more as like a crutch. You know, you roll your foot. You know, Melissa just rolled her foot and she was on a crutch for a couple of days. That is supposed to help bridge that gap to get to a spot of healing. eventually you have to relearn how to walk, kind of refix that gait. And ideally, all those things are pretty squared off beforehand. But I think that if we can take anything away from this, it seems like we're all kind of on the same page where it can be both, right? We can see the viewpoint on both ends of those things, and then really just hope to educate and hope those people are educated as well.
I can confirm that Jeff is super easygoing and can talk, because I remember, do you remember this? I'm going to share a story.
Okay, I was going to say, I probably will once you tell it.
No, you
now,
won't.
right now,
It was
I
like
don't.
2016, 2017, you're just hanging out in the front office, and I was not a coach yet. So it has to be 2016 maybe.
Okay.
Knock on the door. Hey, Jeff. You're like, hey. Probably annoyed at me about something. But
See,
like,
preconceived notions. Do we all see? Do
No,
we all
but-
see
okay, yeah, you're right.
preconceived
I take it back.
notions
It's
a
automatically
reality,
put
though.
on
I take
me?
it back. Anyways, I walk in, I'm super pumped because I had recently gone off birth control and I got my period back, and I was so
Nice.
excited because it all made sense to me, like why I was feeling a certain way and like why I wasn't losing weight or like whatever. And I just like word vomited that all to you. And like he, at that time, maybe wasn't super into talking about periods, did not have a daughter yet. I don't even know if you were married yet. Like,
Nope,
not
not
sure.
at that point.
Yeah,
Nope.
8 years ago.
So me like word vomiting all about my period and birth control to Jeff. And he was like super receptive and just like made me feel okay. I don't know what you said. I think he just did that. I think he
Yeah.
just like nodded at me and was like, great, so good.
Yeah.
And then I just left. And
Well,
I felt great about it.
Anytime anybody is, I do remember that, by the way. And that was like the first of many conversations that I think then we started to have about cycles,
Yeah. It was
about
just
hormones.
like, I was super stoked. Just like
And-
learn all these things about my body. And I wanted to share with Jeff.
Well, and this goes to the post that I made this week a little bit, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've kind of put out in my post this week that, you know, I definitely like struggled a little bit with, you know, being a male coach around females, given just my background of not having a lot of leadership interaction with females, you know, in the military and stuff. So, but, you know, I'm super thankful for people that were willing to share with me and be open, and help me through some of those things. But I think the biggest thing is like, I'm excited if you're excited, right? I want to help if you want help, you know, if you just want to share and you just want me to celebrate in a victory with you, like, hell yeah, I'm going to celebrate that.
good
Yeah.
puppy.
I'm going to be super excited.
I'm excited if you're excited.
Yeah.
I'm here to help if you want the help.
Yeah. And like, if there was a question there, you want, you
I
know,
probably
if,
had a question, but I was just so stoked. I was
Yeah.
just like, this is an epiphany.
awesome.
yeah, it's, I mean, and that's like, it's,
This can be another podcast, but like girls just don't know about their period.
Yeah.
And now more and more I feel like they do. But like at that time when I was 24, 25, like, or however old I was, like no idea what was going on down there. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, and, you know, birth controls and periods and all that stuff. I mean, again, it kind of goes back to that same thing. Like, are we functioning, you know, properly?
Yeah,
It goes back to
exactly.
a lot of those same conversations. And, you know, I think a lot of times, like when we talk about, you know, taboo and stuff, all teenage girls, you know, like in high school start talking about is, oh, I'm going to get on birth control and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I think a lot of times, like, I'm sure I can guarantee you that parents a lot of times are taking it on their back foot because they haven't taken the time to do the research themselves. They understand what the
Or they
very
just trust the
first,
doctor.
well, right, but you think about what is the very first thing you think about, and this is exactly what we're talking about with Ozempic, right? So birth control, the very first thing you talk about is not getting pregnant. That's what you think about. But then you don't think about the 17 other things that actually happen when you start messing with, you know, your progesterone and all the different hormones and things that go through a functioning, healthy female body.
yeah.
And you're playing with that. You're
Yes.
turning things off and you're tweaking stuff. And that makes all kinds of stuff go and feel different, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's the same thing here, right? Is we're going in and the first thing we're thinking about is Ozempic. So we're thinking appetite suppressant, potential weight loss, right? But we're maybe not thinking about those other 14 or 15 other things that can come in and play. And so, you know, just like you shared, hey, I had this huge victory. Like, it's the same thing. Somebody
Yeah.
could tell me, hey, you know, I took Ozempic. We ran into an ex-client, right? I told you, had been taking Ozempic and TRT and, you know, and just looked amazing. And me and Maria saw him out at dinner and we were just like, man, like, dude, you look great. And he's like, yeah, I'm down like 60 pounds. He's like, my shoulder is not bugging me much anymore. Like, I feel great. You know, I've got all this energy. I'm playing with my kids again. Like, and happy as could be.
Yeah.
And like, and had done that through these medical interventions. And like,
Yeah.
from my end, I'm like, he left and Maria and I were just like, that's awesome. Like, I think that's what you want to hear when somebody takes that leap and that makes that hard decision that they were super successful with it. And then hopefully carried that through to continue being successful, you know, and hopefully having conversations, you know, with doctors to say like, hey, I maybe want to start weaning off of this and, you know, trusting myself a little bit in terms of my own nutritional practices, my own exercise habits, and some of those things. Again, see how we do, right? Knowing that it's always an option to get back on. So, Andy, any thoughts, periods? Did you have, you and Shelby, you know, did you or
He was making fun of me.
he was making fun of
It's
you?
just like number one for the day. We have 5 more hours till the end
No,
of
I
it.
was just nodding. I mean, it's been super. It's been super awesome to be a part of a team where that stuff is talked about when it previously had not been something that I've ever been exposed to or talk. Like I have 2 sisters, never talked to any of that stuff about them with them. But no, I just, you know, this reminds me a lot of very similar framework around other weight loss interventions like gastric bypass surgery, where really we need to be thinking about the contraindications, why we would push someone in this direction, and then, you know, what essentially happens afterwards so we can make sure we can keep that ball moving like you had just said. So for me, it is helpful, just like you said, to have people come in and talk to the coaches about what's going on. I think we're going to see that in the facility during a workout hour with, you know, changes in energy, changes in performance that typically happens when you reduce your calorie intake. But then also too, it just can help us be better coaches to educate and help walk people through, you know, hey, we are weaning off this drug. Are we sure we're getting enough protein? Are we sure we have the appropriate systems and strategies to keep that weight loss off? Sometimes just having that accountability on like checking in and checking your muscle mass can be huge for just keeping that ball moving forward, and then also just giving you the confidence to stick with those structures that you put into play. So I, for one, as a dietitian, I can totally see the pros of it and would encourage people to do so if it made sense. I've been unequipped in the past to help people who struggled with time or with body aches or with just certain food strategies where, you know, they just couldn't start getting that ball moving. So I think that this could be great for people like that. And also, you know, continuing to help people coach through other medical conditions where reducing that body weight can be huge for them. So I always like to peel back the layers. And if I hear anything about like an off lab or, you know, trending high blood sugar or cholesterol, I'm like, ooh, let's go there. So, I mean, we know just 10% of a body weight reduction can help with that. So,
and I think, like you said, the big thing there is like more information makes us better coaches. Like I try to think about that all the time whenever I watch like legal shows and you got your lawyer and they're sitting there in like the interview room and the guy, he's like, tell me everything. Don't leave anything out. Right. And then, you know, the lawyer later in the show gets caught off guard because it's like, you know, the prosecutor is like, oh, he didn't tell you that, did he? And it's like this new evidence drops and you're like, oh, why wouldn't you tell your fucking lawyer that that's what you were doing?
And now we're explicit.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I have to always make sure I try to get one in every show, so I have to mark that one. Yes, we have expletives. But that's what I think about all the time. It's like sometimes I feel like I'm coaching people and they got stuff going on in their life, and you know they won't tell us about it, or we won't know. And I feel like it's like, you know, that's an important piece of information. Obviously, like women do a really good job of coming in and tell us, you know, hey, we're pregnant or we're trying to get pregnant. And you know, I think sometimes guys, I'll throw them under the bus. A lot of times, like they'll have stuff going on in their lives and like they just won't bring it up. They won't talk to us.
November's right around the corner.
Yeah. And we want to know because
even good stuff. Like,
well, yeah, and I mean, Stu's a great story, and hopefully we'll tell you know if you guys haven't listened to Stu's podcast and heard his story before, you should totally go and listen to it because it is really important to understand that, like, you know, having these conversations and being open with somebody and telling them about stuff can be the reason where, you know, somebody like Stu can say like, yeah, you know, I've kind of had this like weird pain. And then that weird pain can kind of be the cause of somebody to be like, you know, that's probably not normal. You should go and get that checked out. And then you go and get checked out. And then like turns out it's cancer. Right. And so I think sometimes those are the things where it's like with a little more transparency, knowing that you're in the trust tree nest, you know, that you can have those conversations and talks with us. It equips us better, maybe not immediately, but definitely into the future to tackle anything that we're kind of working on moving forward. So, all right, wrapping up here. Hey, not bad. We're like 40 minutes. Wrapping up here, Andrew, any final, do you want to do a lightning round? Did you come prepared for a lightning round?
Oh gosh. Related to this or just anything?
Anything.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Oh, I wasn't ready at all.
Who's not ready now?
Yeah, I was going to say, we can totally pause it and come back with our lightning round. But You have any closing thoughts on stuff on the Ozempic?
Did we talk about like the after? I know we talked a little bit, but like the effects of after, like, do we know anyone who's done it successfully and now they're not on it anymore? Like, I mean, I know you hear more and more about people gaining it all back.
Yeah,
like
not
that's
that
all I've heard, but
yeah, I mean, I don't know anybody personally. I do think it's obviously still pretty early, but obviously, I think from my end, the biggest thing always when you're thinking about from an after perspective is it's going to be a lot of the same stuff that's going to come from a before perspective. Is like you're going to have a new body new mass, right? Total mass. You're going to have new skeletal muscle mass, new body fat mass. So you're going to have a new body composition when you think about getting off of it. Hopefully you had a picture of before, but if you don't, you need to go and have a baseline understanding of where's my new metabolic rate, where is my new, muscle mass, how much protein should I be eating given this new kind of frame, right? And just recalibrating a little bit, right? That stuff, those answers, those numbers change your nutritional profile. So as you go through developing this kind of new body, this future body, and you're post it now. So let's say you lost 60, 65, 75, 85 pounds. There are adjustments that you need to make in your nutritional picture as you go through that journey. And if you're after and you have been successful, just making sure that we reprioritize on those fundamentals of nutrition, making sure, again, that we prioritize, and I can't say this enough, but prioritize lifting, muscle mass, strength, and protein, and those things, because when people go through big weight loss journeys, these are the things that typically that we see suffer and that have long-term health ramifications.
especially females.
Especially females.
Eat your protein.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, we can talk ad nauseum about this, but my real big concern from an Ozempic perspective is that females who already are chronically undereating on protein, who do not do resistance training, but do a lot of endless cardio and already have low muscle mass are going to get on this and are going to just be even worse off from a health perspective and the longevity perspective. They'll hurt their bone density, they'll hurt their muscle mass, and years will go by and, they'll wake up one day and, be one of the people that's sitting there and, is just frail and they're in their 60s or 70s and they're trying to put on muscle. And it's just so hard when you're that age and you all of a sudden wake up and realize like, hey, I'm not functional or capable anymore. Yeah. I want to become functional or capable. It's like, well, it's really hard to do that when you're in your 70s.
I think in that regard, right, then it raises the question when comparing apples to oranges, what's worse, obesity or low muscle mass, right? That raises that question.
Low muscle mass, I would say, from like to a degree.
Yes.
To a degree, I think in terms of health span, is the biggest indicator, right? From a lifespan perspective, obviously obesity, once you get I think it's above 36% body fat, obesity is going to decrease your overall lifespan. So it's the important difference between health span and lifespan, right? And if you guys don't know the difference, health span is basically how long am I functional? So like how long can I still live by myself and, get up and drive my own car and, exactly. And lifespan is just when you die, right?
Yeah. The data's there, exponential risk as you get heavier, right? Your risk for chronic disease and being affected by those, organ system malfunction is there. But when I'm having conversations with people who walk in the door and we're looking at the in-body scan, we're looking at muscle mass, I say, this is our currency for aging. And if the more of it you have, the more wealthy you'll be as you age. You'll be stronger. Your immunity will be higher. You'll be able to take care of yourself longer. I mean, when you frame it that way for people, it starts to make sense. So the weight loss stuff is great. I always say, hey, this is a great ancillary to what we're going to work on, but this is what's going to keep you healthier, stronger for longer. So I agree with you. I think that the muscle mass is way more important than how you look or how heavy you are. That other stuff can be mitigated other ways, but once you lose that muscle mass, it's very, very, very challenging to build back up.
Well, we've also trained numbers of people who would objectively be obese, but also have a high skeletal muscle mass. And they're actually pretty easy to train because they can move a barbell, they can do squats, they can do lunges. And even though you look at them and say, okay, well, there's still 40% or 45 or 50% body fat. So we have some extra fat mass on our frame. they're still strong, functional, and capable, right? And so then from an exercise perspective, we're able to do some damage there and make some progress. And what we find a lot typically is when you have that base fundamental of the strength, it's a lot easier to lose weight, right? It's a lot easier to get that fat off the frame if we already have the muscle mass, if we already have the strength built up. So, you know, and that always reminds me back to like Holly Mangold, right? When you watched her on Biggest Loser, it's like I don't know if she won, but she was very, very successful very quickly because she had a ton of muscle, right? And then unfortunately she fell victim to the fallacy, right? She lost all that weight and then she put it all back on and then some and was worse off after. But I think that's, you know, what we think about with this is that to me is always why muscle is more important, is because you can still stay very functional and be able to exercise properly, like the right way. And a lot of times the fat mass comes off your frame faster if you're burning hotter and doing those exercises a little bit better. So if you're able to lift weights and do some real exercise with that, it's a lot easier. And then if you were to be obese and have low muscle mass where we couldn't do anything, right? So, you know, we'd struggle to do a squat or a lunge or, you know, step up or, you know, ride a bike for an extended period of time, whatever it might be. So, all right. Shelby, closing thoughts? I know you want to talk about after, but
I'm just thinking about all the females out there.
Shout out to the ladies.
Shelby's just shouting.
So
Shout out to the ladies.
to prepare for this podcast, I've done a lot of research and listened to some podcasts and things like that. But the most shocking thing that I read was that it literally could give you thyroid cancer, like period.
Period. There's the period again.
But
Emphasis.
more so in people who have like a family history of that. And I'm thinking about all the females I've ever talked to, my mom included, my aunts, who have hypothyroidism, like already have thyroid issues. And if they're turning to this, you know, drug or whatever you want to call it, like that's just going to like make that even more of a chance that could happen. So to your point, Jeff, like doing the blood scan, finding out what your TSH levels are and like all that stuff is like so important. And then I think back to me when I was, however old I was when I first started birth control. Like I just didn't know any about it. I didn't know what the symptoms were, or the side effects were. I didn't know what I was taking. I was just taking it to take it because I was going to college. And like,
You didn't know the questions to ask.
I didn't know that, but I also don't even remember like being in the room with the doctor. You know what I mean? So like, it was probably just my mom. Like, here you go. Shout out, Mom. But
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like we go into that because we feel like we have to. And then 10 years later, when I got off birth control, I was like hustling to get my body back because it shuts down all those hormones. And that's the same thing with this. It shuts down the, what's the hormone? What is it called? Do you know?
Glucagon like peptide 1.
No, is that what the appetite suppressant hormone is called? Do we know
Ghrelin.
this? Okay. Anyways, so it shuts that down. And then when you come off of it, it comes back. It's like, comes like roaring back, right? So that makes me.
Hearing you talk about the birth control situation reminds me of the few clients that we've spoken to where they've visited with their PCP. They're looking at their blood work and their metrics. And like people are getting like my chart notes saying like this is off whack. And instead of it being like a statin or like a blood sugar lowering medication, it's like, and that plus Ozempic, like just going right to it now at this point. So I think that's kind of one of the scarier
Oh
parts
yeah,
of
you
things.
got hard triggered on that the other week, right?
Yes.
It was like, yeah, you got somebody who like was immediately recommended medical intervention, like without even a real conversation face to face with the doctor.
Yeah.
It was like over like a text message or a voicemail or something like that.
Yeah, and I think it is hopeful that we're seeing great practitioners like Dr. Genie in the community take a much more holistic picture of their patient and talking to those people. But I think what we're finding is they're few and far between. The good news is the wave is there and we're seeing more of that. But now that's one of my first, actually that's how I start most of my nutrition conversations is I ask about medical history, ask if they have a PCP. And then I'm finding myself following it up with, do you like that doctor? After we talk to about a couple of the things that they might be going through. But that sounds just like a very similar situation. So
Yeah.
Well,
It's like I totally get it. Like,
Yeah.
I get it. It's hard to avoid. It's everywhere. It's every other commercial.
yeah, it is.
Just like over-educate.
Well, my mom was a nurse and, at the very end, like before she retired, she was just working in like a primary care and she would do the initial appointment with people a lot of times. And, they would always ask like, what medications are you on? And they'd be like, the yellow one and, the white, the big white one and then the little white one. And she was always stunned. She's just like, they just have no idea. And they're taking serious, like hard drugs,
Yeah.
right?
Still to this day too.
And
so it sounds like it hasn't changed much
yeah,
since she
right.
retired.
And so she's like, it's mind blowing because they not only like, if you don't know what you're on, you don't even know how to have a conversation or what questions asked to potentially get off of it. They just have no desire. It's just a complete blind trust system in the medical practitioners, which I think puts a lot of unfair stress on the medical practitioners because people aren't taking any ownership of their own situation. But that's, in thinking about this, like hopefully if you are in the friendship community or you guys are listening to the podcast, I think it's the biggest thing is like learn the right questions to ask of your doctors that would potentially you would want to be working with on this. Like get a blood test, tell them, hey, I'm going to be taking this. I'm going to be tracking my muscle mass, doing this. What I want to know from you is if any of my levels kind of get out of whack. Like it's almost like you need to be in some capacity directing your doctor and take some ownership of your own situation. And, my mom's been the shining example of this where, she got put on a little medication. The very first thing she said, like looked right at the doctor and goes, I'm not going to be on this long. Like my whole goal is just to get off of this drug. Right. So what do you need to see for that? He goes, well, you need to see this level at this, right? It's like, it's at 8.1. It needs to be at 5.1. And she goes, okay. And it's like, comes in, talks with Andy, fixes her nutrition, starts training, goes back, blood levels are normal. She gets off the medication, goal achieved. Right. And it's like, but that's what we should be doing. Like that's inspirational. That's exactly where we should be when we're looking at some of these interventions. But I mean, I just think so many people are caught a little bit behind the eight ball with some of these things.
Advocate for yourself,
Yeah, that's exactly right.
especially the women out there.
Sure.
Especially the women and the young women, to your
Yeah.
point. I mean, I think that's a big thing. What we're talking about is like, there's a lot of overprescription, in the society right now. And a lot of it is just a byproduct of there's not enough doctors, there's not enough time, and there's too many patients effectively, due to just the malhealth of our whole society. And so then they get forced down to, hey, I've only got 4 minutes or 5 minutes per patient. What can I do in 4 or 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Right. And so
And if they don't answer your questions, just find a new doctor.
Yeah.
Like seriously, just don't accept the first answer. I feel like sometimes you just have to find what works for you.
Yeah, you never take the first estimate on the thing. Always get a couple, right?
I love hearing cutthroat Shelby.
Yeah, and second opinions. I mean, Dr. Jeannie will
Cut 'em
tell you
out.
that in a heartbeat. Yeah.
If they're gonna if you're asking questions about your period and they're just like, oh, this birth control will fix all of that, but you don't want to be on birth control, like they're not the doctor for you.
Yeah.
And that's happened to pretty much everyone I've ever talked to about it.
Yeah, it's wild.
Mainly OBGYN in that case, right? Not like PCP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it can
But
be a
I'm
nurse
sure it's both,
practitioner
right?
too.
Yeah.
I mean, I go to like a women's health place and they're pretty chill about it. But I mean,
Yeah.
it can be, I guess it could be a PCP because when I was 16 and 18, that's who I saw. That's who prescribed it to me.
Yeah, when I heard you say nurse practitioner, it made me think of where we're seeing more nurse practitioners now, and they're in more like aesthetic bars, like the
Yep.
beauty bar for Botox and different things like that. So I'm like, okay, this is tracking now. This is
Yeah.
seemingly another thing that they can take ownership of. But I got lighting questions.
Yeah.
Let's hear 'em.
Okay,
Yeah.
I want to hear from you guys. What's your current like nutrition go-to right now? Something different than your normal nutrition that's like sneaking in day to day.
What do you
like
mean?
for example, mine is I found a new maple butter at Trader Joe's, and it's like
It's
this
just pure maple syrup?
delicious maple syrup
Yeah,
spread
I
that I've
saw
been
that.
putting on my toast in the morning.
You and Andre.
So, do you guys have anything right now that you're playing around with for the users to maybe or listeners to go out and give a try?
I have to think.
I know you guys are both pretty regimented.
I was gonna say I'm
Yeah, I
probably
eat the same
just
thing
I'm
every day.
just one of the worst people to ask because I've eaten the same things for like 15 years.
Same.
I don't play around too much.
We don't
Boring.
dabble.
I have
stick
gone
to what's
back
true.
to I have a the opposite of Chipotle. So there's a handful of days, unfortunately, that I don't get Chipotle, which
so
is
sad.
just
You're still on the Chipotle train?
oh yeah. And so it's my old school. This takes me back years. It actually was funny when I first made it. Maria goes, "Oh my God, I remember when we were dating. You were in that tiny apartment." And
All right,
then
let me
you were-
guess. Is it something buffalo chicken related?
It's it's buffalo ground chicken or buffalo ground turkey, ground turkey.
Nailed it.
So it's 93.7 ground turkey. And I do some Montreal steak. I do just a little hint of barbecue sauce, buffalo sauce, and then a little cheese. And then now what I've started to do is
Just
I
a little cheese.
dice up a baked potato, and then I put it over top of the baked potato, and then
Okay.
mash it all in. So it's like
Nice.
it's like a sweet potato hash.
Do you eat the skin on the potato?
No, we pull the skin off because it's a baked sweet
Shelby's
potato.
cringing right now.
I know. I like to.
That's where all the good stuff is,
Maria
man.
is anti-skin on sweet potatoes.
I don't get it. It's like
Me
makes the
either.
potato to me.
And
love the
I
skin.
agree completely.
I've
And
seen her eat a full.
I've seen her fist a sweet potato.
Yes, potato.
But
to
not
the
with the
face.
like
skin
a
on
banana,
it,
right?
Yes.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
here.
It was
when
like
you were
wrapped.
forcing her to eat
That's
more.
right. It was wrapped in tinfoil. She was holding it like
Literally, she's like, I gotta eat. She goes,
I gotta
Jenny's
eat.
been eating a sweet potato today. I gotta eat a sweet potato today.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
those years were fun.
Those were fun
I was
years.
tracking her calories at
the beeps.
and I go, yeah, you got to eat like 3,200
She was so
calories.
small.
And yeah, we tracked her and she was at like 1,800 calories.
She was just
Ooh.
munching on
Just
sweet potato all
force
day.
feeding.
Lots of carbs.
Yeah.
Anything from
my
you,
thing
Shelby?
is like, so now that we're getting into fall, I get into like bone broth. It's pretty heavily.
Where do you get
Yep.
your bone broth from?
I get the Kettle Fire
Kettle
stuff.
Fire,
And
yeah.
then I also will go to Rebowl, and if they have it, I'll
Oh,
just
they have
get
good
it.
bone broth. Theirs
Yeah.
is really good.
So good.
Where do you get the kettle fired one though?
I think it could be. It's like
They have it in
everywhere.
most places.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really popular.
I'm
good
just
brand.
waiting for it to pop up in Costco so I can buy a whole crate.
Oh,
That's
nice.
the Dana White thing. If you ever saw the Dana White, you know, he lost a bunch of weight and he posted this big thing about how like he just went full like conspiracy theorist pseudoscience was just like, yeah, you just do a 7-day fast and you do nothing but bone broth the whole time and you'll
Nothing
just
but
lose
broth.
20 pounds. And people just were like, all right, I'm just going to do that. And it's just
Shelby's
like,
smiling like
yeah.
she may have considered that.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it's
was
not
just
like
laughing at the impersonation.
The impersonation,
voice.
yeah.
it's not like I mean it's not like the worst advice, but it's also just one of those things
I
where
mean,
you're just
you're
like
gonna get protein.
yeah. I mean, he's
Yeah.
doing it. He's got all these people watching. He's got doctors and all this shit. But
This is getting me excited because it sounds like we're due for like another nutrition off a specific topic podcast.
yeah.
Just hearing you guys riff about some bone broth and like some conspiracy nutrition theories.
Oh yeah. I mean, I
There's
can
so
go.
many good ones.
I can go all
God.
days. I love going down the the scene where what crazy fad diets people are into and seeing how the like anti-seed oil crowd is super popular right now.
That confuses me.
Yeah, there's some
Because I forget what's a seed.
there's some good ones out there.
Get what's a seed?
So it's just interesting
Well,
to
I'm
me.
just like-
I feel like sometimes people come up and they tell me stuff, and I go, "Oh, I know what corner of YouTube or Twitter or whatever you got caught into this." And
Yeah.
I'm like, you just got caught into the algorithms, got you, and just take it and try it, whatever.
Also, cottage cheese is forever.
Yeah, at night.
You're back on that game?
No, I
or
put it with
you've
like
been
my
on
dinner.
that
Like
game?
for instance, like Monday, I made pasta, which by the way, chickpea pasta, CHICKAPEA is the brand.
Nice.
It's like legitimate. It
Okay.
tastes just like regular pasta.
We're sending this out to all these companies that we're talking about right now.
I'm a chickpea pasta connoisseur.
Okay.
I try them all.
Nice.
And this is the best one I've
I'm
found.
Italian.
Sure.
That's sacrilegious
Did
to
you
me. I
ask
don't
her-
care for that
Be
talk.
quiet.
What's your favorite noodle type?
I've been. I only think. Never mind. Shells.
Okay.
Okay.
The
Small,
shells
medium, or large?
Are the cute? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Like
The
they have
really
medium.
small ones,
They
like
gotta
the
hold
size of
they gotta
your
hold the
fingernail?
sauce.
Like Velveeta?
Not the
Okay.
big.
Oh no. No, I'm talking about like the
The little guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
They look like a little hermit.
I like how you talk about
Wait,
cottage
I'm not
cheese.
done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So chickpea,
Yep.
best brand out there. I made pasta the other day with turkey and my regular sauce, and then I just dump cottage cheese on top, and then it kind of melts
Oh, nice.
and gets cheesy like
Yeah,
ricotta.
yeah. So it's like low.
So it's like a
small
lasagna
curd.
mush.
Yeah.
Love
When
mush.
I was going to say about cottage cheese is when I
Interesting. I have to
I mean,
think
plus
about
red
that.
chili flakes.
Sounds good.
Little
So it's
spicy.
kind of like mac and cheese.
No. It's like
It's like a
mushed
creamy
up lasagna.
pasta.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because cottage cheese and ricotta cheese are like the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
in my
can be
opinion.
similar
My
texture,
non-Italian
but way higher in
opinion.
protein, which is nice.
Yeah.
and less fat. When I talk about cottage cheese to clients, like it's always like the same reaction, like, oh,
know.
I forgot about cottage cheese.
Yeah.
It's like this very fond memory, like, oh yeah,
good.
yeah.
So good.
When I was trying to like bulk back in the day, I would always do like I don't personally I don't love cottage cheese, but I would always do like a full bowl right before bed.
Oh,
I used to do it.
nothing like a big
Yeah,
bowl of
queso.
cottage cheese in your
Queso.
belly.
Yep, exactly.
Are you sweet or savory, like with pepper and spices, or fruit, or just plain
straight to the house.
I
Just,
used to mix it with
yeah,
peanut butter.
Plain
peanut butter?
Yeah.
Whoa, that's a hack I
So
never
then
even
it would
thought
be like
of.
protein, fat, slow digesting.
That would
tasty
sound so
protein.
good with like some jam in there too. Like a
I'm
peanut
like
butter and jelly.
one of
Relax over there.
outside of cheese. I feel like for the most part now, I'm like one of the most utilitarian eaters you'll
What does
ever
that
meet.
mean?
So just like utilitarian means like only for the function of it, like
Oh.
not at all
Cheese has a
for
function?
like No. That's why I said outside
Oh.
of cheese.
Got it.
Cheese is my one thing that's like anti-function, but like back in the day when I was in that mode, I literally would take a George Foreman grill. You guys remember those back in the day?
Oh, yeah.
I would do a George Foreman grill and just do 2 chicken breasts and literally take them right off and then just eat them like this with my hand. No sauce, no seasoning, no salt, no pepper, no nothing. Just straight like grilled chicken breast right off of the George Foreman.
Liz doesn't like when I tell her about that. I say nutrition should mainly be like 90% utilitarian. Like it serves a purpose. It's just like fueling you.
Fuel.
Like you'll learn to like it over time
Gas up the
potentially.
engines.
Yep.
But now it's got me thinking about cottage cheese and peanut butter.
Cottage cheese, I would say, is utilitarian.
It serves a purpose,
not
but it's also
fancy.
very enjoyable.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think that's where we're kind of meeting in the middle here.
Yeah. There you guys go. There's your hack. All right. Hey, we're at 59:40.